What is up? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Shred Show Live. Do we have a show for you today? I'll be honest, when I first started talking with Brian Zitin over at Reggora about appraisals, sometimes some of you guys, your eyes glaze over. You're like, who cares about appraisals? But Brian and I have really shed some light on the entire appraisal space. And with what Reggora is doing, it's changing the process. It's changing our system. And we have got two gentlemen joining us today, one with 40 years, one with over 30 years. We have got the best of the best. Today, we have the Appraiser Masterclass for all of you. You're not going to want to miss this. As a matter of fact, you're going to want to tag your real estate partners. You're going to want to tag other mortgage professionals. You know why? Because these two guys are going to shed some light on questions and have a conversation about appraisals that you never imagined. We're about to absolutely blow your mind. Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready? Are you ready? It is time to shred. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Shred Show Live. I am your host, Josh Spitz, and I've got Brian Zitin of Reggora joining me, CEO and founder. He is always having a great conversation about appraisals. Brian, good morning. Welcome back to the show. Excited to have you.
Good morning, Josh. Appreciate it. Always, like I said, an electrifying intro. So appreciate the kickoff.
Of course. And we've got two gentlemen joining us this morning. We've got Rich Goulet and Rick Lipoff joining us, these are two guys who have been in the appraisal space, like I said, for 40 and 30 plus years. They have seen more about appraisals. Dude, let's be honest, Brian, you and I can be honest. They've been doing appraisers for longer than we've been alive. So these are the guys who really know this space more than anybody. So I'm really excited to get into the conversation with them today. I don't know about you, Brian, but I'm pumped for it.
Yeah, no, super excited. We, the last two sessions that we've done have really focused on the general appraiser kind of appraisal landscape, as well as the point of view from some of the lending side, loan officers, sales folks. So super excited to get the point of view from, some veterans. And not just that, both Rick and Rich have direct appraiser experience themselves, but also running actual business of an appraisal company. So I think it's going to be, really interesting perspectives here today.
It's going to be incredibly unique perspectives. And before we get too deep into it, I don't want to go super, you guys could give us backgrounds that could probably just blow our mind. But Rich, let's start with you. Maybe give us just a quick background, how you got started in the industry, how long you've been in the industry. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Hey, I came out of brokerage back in the late 70s, early 80s when rates were very, very high.
What were rates? What were rates back then?
16% for a single family home.
Holy cow.
A little bit different than today.
All you complaining about 3% interest rates, shut up.
And then I moved into appraisal, developed a team. We've got a commercial team. We've got a residential team, but 35 appraisers total. And we've been active for all these years, and we're having a great time at it.
That's awesome, man. That's crazy to think. You've probably seen the appraisal process go from one extreme to the absolute other. You saw the 08, 09 crash, all that fun stuff. So yeah. You absolutely unique perspective. Rick, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got your start.
Well, I guess I should say when I started, interest rates were about 9%. So you can tell when that was, about 1980, 88, 89. Started going to work for Shawmut Bank, which is no longer here. Learned the craft, learned commercial. My father was an appraiser, learned from him at U.S. Trust Bank, started my company, and it's been 33 years now.
Wow. Again, that's just crazy. Even a few years from, when you started Rich to when you started Rick, the jump in interest rates. And again, probably even the process itself is just crazy. But Brian, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this, because I'm so excited to talk about what these guys have seen, how the appraisal, again, just the entire ecosystem is evolving, the things that Reggora is doing to help change the space. So let's kind of dive into this conversation and start talking about some of the things where all you mortgage professionals listen. If you're real estate, if you're a mortgage professional, again, this conversation today is going to shed some light on some really key topics that I think are going to really help you understand the appraisal process in particular.
Yeah, no, definitely. And we were catching up a little bit about it earlier before this, and was a theme on our prior show, but just definitely this kind of, I don't want to say gray area, but people looking to understand, like, what are the best ways to interact with appraisers from the lending side? What's important to building relationships? How do we manage expectations, communicate, all that sort of stuff? So those are some of the things they want to cover today. We can start, and maybe Rick, we can start, and then we'll jump to Rich. But so, can you talk about some of the changes that we were just talking about that, from previous years to now, how it works with your relationships, with lending institutions, and kind of what are the keys to building those relationships now that there's a little bit of a firewall?
Absolutely. In the old days, you had direct relationships with the loan officers. And I tell you, that was let's look back at some of the good old days, because I don't know about you, but it's all about relationships. It's about the journey along the way, just not where you get to. And we would go to Red Sox games. We would go to dinner. You would get to know these guys you were doing business with, whether they worked for a bank or they were a mortgage broker. But unfortunately, with each crisis that we've gone through as a country in financials, in the mortgage industry, the government comes in and seeks to fix things with blanket rules to make changes. And sometimes that affects a large majority of people that may not have been the people that needed to be fixed. And unfortunately, the loan officers today would love to talk to us, but in the mortgage crisis of 08-09, things changed. Firewalls were put up, rules were put in place. And for the most part, we deal with underwriters and processors and traffic cops inside banks that run interference between the loan officer and us. And that's the way the world is right now. And I miss the way it was, but it is working fine today.
Rich, in particular, do you miss those conversations? Do you miss that relationship? Do you think that was again, being in it as long as you have, do you think that, like, now that you can have those conversations, has it been a positive? Has it been a negative?
Well, I think it's been overall better, but I built my business on having relationships with loan originators, and we have to remember that up until the firewall in 2008, I believe, home equity code of conduct, is that what it was, Rick?
Yeah.
Up until that happened, we had terrific relationships with our lenders, and it gave us a lot more flexibility then than it does now. Issues that come up with value, we can't really deal with those anymore, because what we send the lender and what they have from us as an appraisal is cast in stone, and no changes can be made under any circumstances, because we can no longer communicate with the people that need to be communicated with. So losing the clients and entertaining and going out with clients, as Rick mentioned, was a regular part of what we did, and that's pretty much come to an end.
Yeah, and we're in a really interesting time in the appraisal industry right now, also because, previously, let's call it maybe 2017, 2018, so there were no longer these direct relationships and volumes were lower, right? So appraisers were the ones hunting down, trying to find business. Can we get this order? Working with different. Now it's the opposite. Now appraisers are inundated with so many orders from different lenders. Now that these relationships are gone, we'll do a snake. So we can start with Rich and then go to Rick. How do you, Rich, think about, which orders that you're going to prioritize, which lenders that you have good relationships with or bad, and what are the dictators of that? I would love to just get your kind of gut take on all that.
Well, first of all, we have to remember that this is my opinion and likely Rick's opinion, but appraisers have been under the radar and underpaid for the last 15 years. And we're only now seeing that fees are going up for us, so it's making it a little bit more palatable to be comfortable working and take on some tougher assignments at the current rates, which are getting much better, I have to admit. But you also have to remember that when Rick and I started, larger companies, appraisal companies, were the norm. And now it's become very independent, and there's a lot of individual appraisers out there that are operating on their own, and they deal with clients separate from us. Even though they may work for us, they also have clients that they work with directly. So there's a lot of changes. The landscape has changed considerably over the years, but we enjoy our relationships. We can communicate with the banks without any problems. We can express opinions as well, and things are good, but they've changed. And the thing now is with our independent contractors, and again, they're all independent contractors. As much as I might have 20 residential appraisers working for me, maybe half of them work for me exclusively. The other half may work for me and other people, but they're all very conscious of fees and the type of assignment and how much complexity there may be for the particular job they're going to do. And they will oftentimes say no, and hopefully for us, the majority of times they say okay. So that's the differences we see today than we did 8, 10, 12 years ago.
And Rick, for you, is it similar that, when you think about either your individual appraisers or you accepting work on behalf of them, when it comes to these different orders that you have to prioritize and think about, is it just pretty much about fee and type of assignment and things like that? Or are there additional layers to how you curate what work you're doing and how fast and all that?
It's a few things. It is fee. I have some clients. Look, we're turning away as much work as we're taking in every day. It is extremely frustrating, but I always say I don't have a bunch of appraisers folded up in the closet that I can take out when things get crazy. I just finished shepherding 2 trainees to full certification, and that's how I'm going to build new appraisers. And that's time consuming. That takes 1.5 years, 2 years to do. So when things explode, your staff doesn't increase. The work doubles, you have to turn it away. So that gives me the opportunity to take the best work at the best price. But one of the things I also think about is how good is this client? How consistent are they even in the small times? How long have we worked together? Do they bother me with unnecessary things? Are they easy to work with? All of these different things come into play when I'm deciding on the cadence of the work that I'm taking, especially when it's this busy and I can take what I want. And these are times where I do pick up the phone and say, listen, you are now the lowest fee in my stable. And I'm just letting you know I'm turning work away, and I love you, but I'm not taking your work. You're not going to see me taking as much. And some clients have said, tell me what the fee should be, and they've changed their fees. And other very large clients, have not done that and have seen me take less work.
So this is actually, I'm really glad we're going down this road because we just got a question in from LinkedIn on Joshua Stevens says this: Rich, how do you get your appraisers to prioritize your orders versus direct lenders, AMC partnerships? So kind of right along that line, let's maybe expand on that and answer Josh's question there.
Okay. Well, we try to make sure that everybody gets taken care of within the time limits that they've set for us or we've agreed to. And we pretty much treat everybody the same. We try to stay away from looking at fees and how much one lender's paying us versus another. And, that's if you're going to stay in business, you got to be straight across the board with all your clients. You really can't have favorites. If sometimes you'll get a rush, you'll get to something that has to be done quickly. Well, if we have the manpower and the woman power, if you will, then we want to make sure that we get that done in the time that they need it. But for the most part, we try to deal with everybody pretty evenly across the board, AMCs or regular bank clients.
Rick, in your mind, what were some of those things? I think it'd be helpful for people to understand, just so that they can, it's like a what not to do sort of thing. What are, you mentioned easy to work with or bugging you with unnecessary things. Like, what are some examples of that, in the day-to-day kind of operation?
Well, Rich will agree with me that we want to put the best work out possible. There can be some reviews, and you see it constantly from certain clients that are just go over the top. And we are happy to respond, and we do, to anything. But if you have a client that's asking you for things that just really aren't attacking value, but it's a reviewer that's just trying to earn their keep and say, look at me, I've asked the appraiser for 15 things on every appraisal. Time is money. And if it's value related and we've missed something, we're happy to correct it. But if there's a review process that's coming at us constantly that I find is over the top, who wouldn't gravitate to a client that that doesn't do that to you every time? As to Chris's question about how do you get your appraisers to prioritize you first? over the independent work that they're doing on their own. I think it has to do with us constantly pushing to get the best fees, because as a company, we're taking a piece. I've given my guys more than I used to do to keep them with us. You always need to point out the value that you add, where we just want our appraisers out there appraising, but we're dealing with the communication, with the issues. I've had appraisers leave and go on their own and come back and say, I got paid more for each one, but I was dealing with the billing and I was dealing with the questions, and I was, and I like working for you and just being out there appraising. And I think a lot of the appraisers stick with us because they know that there's going to be a slow time. And if they have 1 or 2 clients that fill them up in these times, they'll be gone. So I think they're smart. They continue to take work from us as well as themselves, which hedges against the slow times. Would you agree with that, Rich?
Absolutely. Sure.
So I want to kind of build on this a little bit and taking in, I know Brian's got some other things that we want to hit on, but Rick, you mentioned this a couple of times, and I would love both your perspectives on this, because Rick, you mentioned it a couple of times now, but the new people, or new blood, if you will, entering the industry, it is very here in the state of Utah, the requirements to get it to become an appraiser is difficult. Do you guys see, I mean, as owning these companies, people aren't rushing out. People aren't saying, you know what I want to do when I grow up? I want to be an appraiser. That sounds like the job for the life for me. We just don't see that happening. How are you guys trying? Rick, you just mentioned you got done training a couple of people with this. How do we actually help people get in the industry? How do we show them that it can be a great career? Is it like, how are you guys dealing with that? Because we just don't see the people entering the industry like we used to.
We don't. I mean, the federal government, is this for me? Yes.
Both
Yeah.
of you.
The federal government over time has increased the number of hours it takes in education to become an appraiser. They've done a lot of things to make it harder to get in. They're starting to roll some of that back now with pressure from the industry, but they made it quite difficult. With the fees going up right now, I think it's much more enticing to enter. As for me, only being able to train 2 or 3 people at a time, I find that people knock on my door, and it's often somebody who is leaving an industry, and they're a little older and they want the flexibility of running their own time. And for whatever reasons, they have come to appraising. I think I've been fortunate to have this stream of pretty decent people coming through. But overall, I think in 2007 in Massachusetts, we had something like 7,000 appraisers, and I think the number now is more like 2,000.
Wow.
And and when I said for 10 years, the average age of the appraiser in America is 55. And I have to remind myself that it's probably 65 now, 10 years,
Wow.
10 years later. Yeah.
Rich, what are your thoughts on it?
Just real quick, one of the big issues that we've been struggling with for the past 4 or 5 years is the fact that, 8, 10 years ago, an appraisal would be 10, 11, 12 pages. Now the average appraisal that goes out the door is 29, 30, 35 pages. So the amount of time and effort that has taken appraisers to get reports done today has really taken away from their ability to make money. And it's been a lot more difficult. So an appraiser who might have done 6 or 7 reports in a week is now doing 3 or 4. And that's where, the raising of the fees has never been complementary to the amount of effort and work that an appraisal requires today versus what it did 8 or 9 or 10 years ago. And that's been a big issue, and that's kept a lot of people out of the business. But right now we've got 7 trainees, 4 on the residential side, 3 on the commercial side. And, we can see the possibilities that as the fees have come up a little bit, that our appraisers coming into the business are in a lot better position to make money and do well at it, but only if the fees continue to rise.
Well, it's a very interesting point, and also dovetails nicely into some of the other topics that we've talked about, Josh, which is like the appraisal modernization efforts that the GSEs are working towards in terms of like updating the data and all this stuff. You both have seen the evolution of, probably like Polaroid pictures, stapled into a report to UAD format with standardized data sets and these increasing underwriting standards. To Rick's point, one of the changes that is very controversial to appraisers is this idea that appraisers may become more oriented to doing like purely desktop work, and that the forms get streamlined, beyond the 1004 versus 1007 and all these different ones into a more standardized, data-oriented approach that the GSEs are working on. Do you view that as positive in that, appraisers won't necessarily need to be driving around as much and can focus on what they want to do? Or do you view that as, foolhardy in terms of putting inspections in the hands of people not as experienced? Like, what's your general take on, and we can, once again, we'll start with Rich, then we can go to Rick, like, the appraisal modernization efforts that are happening in terms of the changing role of the appraiser over time?
Well, they've already done some experimental work with dual roles, appraisers sitting in the office doing the appraisal, and some independent person out there on the street doing the inspections of the property. And they concluded early last year, 2020, that wasn't going quite as well as just having an appraiser do it all. And I think that's probably the position of most appraisers, that if they have to share that responsibility with somebody else and take on that responsibility when they sign the report, I think they're going to be less likely to want to do it. And I really believe that I don't see, maybe on drive-bys, maybe there's some other means from which they can do it, but I just don't think appraisers generally are going to be particularly happy with having to share the responsibility and then ultimately get paid a lower fee for the amount of work they put into their assignments.
Well, I tend to agree with Rich, except we have been through so many changes forced upon us. And with each one, appraisers leave because they don't like what they see, and we all grunt, and we get through it, and we evolve with whatever is necessary to continue to do our craft, our profession. Originally I felt exactly the way Rich does about this, with this bifurcated appraisal. It took this long for me to just keep an open mind and say, if I have to try it, I'll try it. I do agree with Rich that I think that if they did something like this, there would be no liability on us whatsoever. If we're not going into the house, you can't put anything on me. And I don't think that's what the government or the lending institutions want. I do think that where they're talking about going with this one form that evolves based on what you input. So if you start off and say it's a 2-family, the next field changes. And instead of choosing your form and filling that form in, they're talking about just a computer program where as you go, it evolves and the form is what it is when you're done. I think that's an intriguing modernization of what we do. But this bifurcation thing that Rich is talking about, the jury's still out on that.
Gotcha. No, it's super helpful. And to your point, yeah, that, it seems like it's from their perspective, a balance of, some of your earlier conversations around, it's tough to get new people in the field. And so, to deal with increasing volume, I think that they're viewing it as a necessity to increase the supply of who can actually go and do this stuff. But then to Rich's point, it's like, well, just make it easier for an appraiser to do his job. And then maybe that will, streamline things in and of itself. So it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. On the lender side, what are some of those things that they can do to make your life easier in terms of getting reports done faster and more efficiently and things like that? Are there particular ways that you like to communicate, Rich, with lenders in terms of like assignments or tasks? And then, same thing to you, Rick. It'd be interesting to hear.
I think one of the issues that comes up from time to time is just the type of software the lenders are using to communicate with us. And I think there's probably some changes there that could be made that would be helpful. But again, most of what we do now is via email. So oftentimes we're not communicating, verbally with anybody at any of the lenders. It's just this is the order that comes in. Do you want it? Do you want to accept it? Fine. What's your turn time? And that's sort of helped us in a lot of ways, because now it gives us an idea as to what they need and when they need it, and we can take a look at the property and do a little analysis on our own to see, is it a $5 million property? Is it a $300,000 property? So what's been changing has been good with a few exceptions, basically.
Well, I think if everybody used Reggora, the world would be a better place.
There you go.
There you go. Drop it. No, listen. There are a lot of good sites out there. There's a lot of good technology. Rich is right. If they give us a lot up front, and it's been interesting. Some of the portals will come with their own kind of field card with a plot plan and a little bit of a snapshot. That absolutely helps. I think what's most important is that we're all working together and understanding what market we're in. It takes 6 months before the lenders are broken and realize it's going to take 3 to 4 weeks for an appraisal. And the angst between us and them for that 3 to 6 months, where they're mad at us because we're missing turn times, when the lender and the loan officer says to the broker out in the field, this is the expectation. The appraisers are out this long. Our underwriters are out that long. You need to be honest about your closing dates. And if we could get those things to happen a little bit quicker until people are just broken before appropriate turn times occur, I think everybody would be better.
Yeah, that's fair. There's not a lot of, we obviously see a lot of the data on our side, so we know like real-time market conditions, but lenders live in their own, bubble. They don't necessarily know that other lenders are struggling or not. And so, yeah, to your point, that is an interesting point because it takes, I think, word of mouth months to actually catch up to what's happening in real time in the market. So it makes me think it, might be worthwhile for us to put out, peer data or something like that to help people. But that is a good point. Do you find have you found in the last 6 months, general, receptiveness to telling lenders, hey, your fees are low, you need to increase them, or are some lenders still just like, whatever, I'll just find a different appraiser at this point?
Sorry, go ahead, Rich.
I can tell you from firsthand that we've made a concerted effort all year long, and since January of 2020, to let everybody know that, listen, these reports are getting too voluminous and too much time and too much effort to get them done. And there's the MC at the end of the single family reports is a waste of time. And those are the issues that we think the client should know. But we also have been trying to get them to say, hey, listen, X number of dollars for this job, it's not worth it to us anymore. And that's probably the only downside of having more work than we really can do, is to a certain degree we are spending time focusing on the client and how many callbacks we might get, and then what is the fee, and you try to balance it all off at the same time, and it still comes down to a fee-driven business for anybody, for any business, whatever the industry might be. You try to do your best to stay with clients you've been with for a long time. We've got a very large client that has the lowest fee of all of our clients, and we're trying to work on that as we speak and get that changed, and hopefully that'll happen soon. So these are some of the issues.
Yeah. And I know the client Rich is talking about right now, the same thing. Literally you call up the point person who you adore and say, this is killing me, but I can't keep I'm going to try to take what I can, but everybody else is now at this level and it's just too dramatic. And when you're trying to keep your appraisers who are doing business with other people directly on a much higher level, you can't be that low. So you gravitate to the higher ones because that's going to retain your appraisals stable. Yeah.
This is something interesting. And as we start to wrap things up here, we're approaching our 30-minute mark. And I want to, there's so many more points that I'd love to dive into, but I'd love to kind of start to wind down with this. And Brian, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but we've had a lot of conversation with the evolution of technology, with the evolution, and Rich, you kind of mentioned this as well, and Rick, you did too, to a certain point, the collaboration that happens between lender, between appraisal, between everybody in the process. A lot of the argument with technology and AI is like, well, eventually the real estate agent is going to be replaced. The mortgage professional is going to be replaced. The appraiser is going to be replaced. We're all going to be replaced by technology. And especially talking about fees. With fees on the rise, what are you guys' thoughts when it comes to, both of you have been in this industry so long? What are your thoughts, feedback? Our appraisers, are they ever going away anytime soon?
You we had a teacher. Rich knows exactly where I'm going. Oh my God, I'm forgetting his name. He passed away. He used to say, every time you took a class with him, we're still here. They said we're going to be replaced. We're still here. And, technology has gotten involved in making our lives easier, paperless, working out of our house. It's been great. I think there's always going to be a need for a set of eyes. And whether it looks different and we are actually out of our house and don't leave and we get virtual videos of the house, I don't know how it's going to happen. But, Zillow doesn't work. And I spend half my time telling my friends and family that, and I prove it to them. It doesn't, because you don't know what renovations were done. Half the information in the assessor's office isn't accurate. And when a computer pulls all of that together, they're missing the human element, the eyes on it, the judgment from one street to the next, from one neighborhood to the next. And I am going to be an eternal optimist about my profession and say that we're always going to be here in some form or fashion.
And my thoughts on that simply are, for the last 4 or 5 years, we've dealt with one major problem in the world of appraisal and brokerage: property selling for significantly more than what they were asking at the time the listing was developed. Okay, and you could never rely on Zillow to give you those answers. Nowadays, it's a question of having a good sense of the properties that are under agreement and ready to close and what they are selling for, and having the actual sale price, and having the local appraisers who have the expertise. They have a relationship with brokers. They can get that information. This world would have been a mess if it wasn't for the appraisers for the last 8 or 9 years. It would have been a lot of deals that would never close, because Zillow wouldn't have enough data, current data, to make these things work as we have as appraisers.
That's like a mic drop. Both of that. I'm going to get memes for both of you. Zillow doesn't work. You're out. Peace. No, it's such a unique perspective. And I agree with you to your point, Rick. I think technology has been a huge advancement. It continues to help us. Like Rich, to your point, appraisals are 30 plus pages now. Technology is helping with bits and pieces of that, but the appraisal process is continuing to be complicated. It's not just a simple, take a picture, take your phone, take this little device and scan the room. It's not that simple. Like, there may come a day back in, 2022, 2024, whenever it is, but it's not tomorrow. It's not in the next few years. So super interesting perspective. Brian, do you have anything else you want to end on? Because that was one of the big things for me.
No, I think they all had, amazing points throughout. So I really appreciate both of you joining us today. And, I hope people took a lot away from it.
I know I took a ton away from that. This is something for me. Yeah, Rich and Rick, we cannot thank you guys enough. And of course, Brian Zitin of Reggora for facilitating this entire discussion. This is so exciting for me. And again, coming from two incredible veterans like yourselves who have shared so much, who have seen the evolution of the appraisal process. And now with your awesome vision of where it's going and where it should be going, really appreciate you guys joining us today and sharing all your expertise and knowledge with us. So thank you so very much.
My pleasure.
Guys, this is what we do here at Shred. We're sharing the stuff that you need to know. And again, Brian and what Reggora and their team are doing, they're trying to simplify it. They're bringing these are two competitors. Rich and Rick are competitors, but they're bringing them together. Rick mentioned it. Rich mentioned it. We need to collaborate. We need to come together. Working together as an industry, we can make it better. We can make it a seamless process, and we have to do it together. So with that, as always, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you. We love you. Now it's time for all of you to go shred, go show up, hustle, repeat every day. We'll see you.